Good morning. Are y'all ready to get our country back? It doesn't sound like it. Y'all ready to get our country back? Bear with me just 1 minute, okay? I get real nervous up here, so I have something I have to do just real quick. Just hang on a second. I apologize, but it won't take but a second. It's painless. It won't be bad. All right. Now, I got to tell you, I am so honored to be here. This is the third year in a row you've been so gracious to ask me over here. I'm really humbled to be the junior senator from Georgia in the United States Senate. I take that very seriously every day. I'm sobered by that responsibility, but you know, sitting here today, I am so encouraged that we have a chance that we haven't had in a few years to get our country back and to change the direction of our country for our kids and grandkids. The great news today is democracy is working. You know, John said, I'm on the Foreign Relations Committee. I chair this subcommittee on State Department oversight, and it's really it's a problem, right? I mean, we're looking at everything. And so I had to go to Beijing, and I was traveling over there, and one of the State Department undersecretaries was going with me, a Democrat, obviously, and he was a very nervous flyer. He is a very nervous flyer. He was sitting next to me, and he was telling me, oh, what a great job Obama's doing, all this, and you know how well that went, right? And so, yeah, right. So breakfast went by, and he's a nervous flyer, and the pilot comes on. He says, you may have heard that noise. We just lost our first engine. Now, it's a 747 out of Chicago going to Beijing. He says, we got no problem. We got plenty of power. This happens sometimes. He says, not a problem. The guy looks at me, he says, what are we going to do? I said, well, eat your breakfast. So then a few minutes later, you know, not long, the pilot comes on, he says, you just won't believe this. Never happened in 30 years career flying. He says, we lost a second engine, but we're going to go on in, but we'll be about 2 hours late. Don't worry. It wasn't long. We lost the third engine, y'all, and the pilot comes on, he says, I know this is very strange. Never happened. I'm not sure it's ever happened before for any pilot, but we have one engine. We're over halfway. We're going to go on in, but we'll be about 3 hours late. By this time, this guy is absolutely apoplectic. You know, he's doing his Hail Marys and everything else. And anyway, he says, David, man, he says, you know, gosh, first it's 1 hour we're going to be late, 2 hours late, and then, you know, 3 hours late. He says, if we lose that fourth engine, we're going to be up here all day. That's what I have to put up with up there, y'all. I am so excited by what we've just gone through as a party. We've had a Republican primary for the ages. And democracy is working. Do you realize in the Republican primary that we just had that voter turnout is up 60%, y'all? 60%. And thank you for that. Thank you. People are acting on their frustration. We now have a true outsider to pit against the best that the Democrats have or what they have up right now. And that means everything to me. We touched on that nerve here, and I'll talk about that in a minute. When Bonnie and I were thinking about doing this 3 years ago, in early 2013, you know, we decided then that we would do this. We felt led, and we thought that maybe we could help, just in a small way, change the direction of our country. But we recognized then we needed to do three things. One, we needed to win the Senate in 2014. And with your help, we did that. And Bonnie and I will forever be grateful for what you did in this room, grassroots conservatives in the state of Georgia. And many of you didn't know who we were. Most of you didn't know who we were. Didn't support us in the primary, which is fine. But when it came time to go to war with the Democrats, you got engaged and you helped defeat the Democrats in the state of Georgia. And I will forever be grateful. Thank you. But we then had to win the Senate in 2016. That's right now. We have to continue to have the majority in the Senate. But most importantly, we have to win the White House right now in 2016. And we've got a candidate we can do it. What I believed last year when I was here and when I started in the United States Senate, I still believe today. We absolutely have to bring term limits to the United States Senate. We have to bring a balanced budget law to the United States Senate. And we finally, once and for all, have to have an honest and open debate about the fair tax and change the way we fund our federal government. One thing I want to assure you of, and why I'm wearing this jacket today, is that 3 years ago, I was an outsider of this process. I was busy in business. I was trying to save money to get kids educated and save money for retirement and not lose my job, honestly. Fear is a great motivator, and that's where I was most of my career. I was blessed to have these nice jobs, but don't think I was born that way. You know, this is a very interesting time in our life, but I was an outsider of the process. And with your grace and God's direction, we were able to do something that we didn't know if it was possible. But I was an outsider then. I'm an outsider now standing before you, and I will always be an outsider in Washington. My perspective after 40 years in business is that in business, you have to have a sense of urgency. You have to have accountability, and you have to focus on the priorities. Those are alien concepts in Washington today. Only a handful of business guys are in the United States Senate. We're blessed in Georgia. Georgia is one of the few states in the country that actually has 2 guys in the Senate who have a business background. And we absolutely have to make sure that the Democrats don't come down here and steal that seat from Johnny Isakson. He's been a great statesman for Georgia, and he's been a great statesman for our country. My perspective will always be different because of you and because of my family and because of my wife. I will always be an outsider to Washington. My main message today is this. I know my wife says I can bring any cocktail party to its knees, and it's true, because this is really bad news, but it's serious. It's why you're here. It's why I'm up here. It's why I'm fighting every day for the people of Georgia, because we, ladies and gentlemen, in America today are in a moment of crisis. A moment of crisis. It has 2 dimensions to it. We have a global security crisis I'm going to speak about, but interlocked with that is our own debt crisis that is now preventing us from providing for our own national defense. This is very serious. I'm on foreign relations, so I get to travel the world and meet heads of state and that sort of thing. We see the rise of many things now that are threatening the security of the United States. Things like the rise of traditional rivals, Russia and China. We see ISIS. We see nuclear proliferation among rogue nations where the threat of annihilation, mutual annihilation, is not a deterrent. We see cyber warfare at an ever-increasing rate, and now what nobody's talking about is an arms race in space. And at that very time, when we're facing more threats than any time in my lifetime, we have a president that has disinvested in the military to a point where we have the smallest army since World War II, the smallest Navy since World War I, and the oldest and smallest Air Force ever. Ladies and gentlemen, we're only spending about 3% of our GDP on our military today because of our financial intransigence and because of these liberal sweeping programs we've been enforcing and enacting for the last 100 years. This just didn't start in the last 7 years. Our foreign policy is in total disarray. Even Jimmy Carter says he can't think of one country today where we have better relations than we did before Barack Obama became president. Ladies and gentlemen, America must lead again. We didn't choose that. We don't have to be the policeman, but we have to lead. We didn't choose it. It's our destiny. To lead again and to provide for our national security. And this is why somebody called me a debt hawk last night. I am. I'm a debt hawk. That's what pulled me in here. I believe if we don't solve that debt crisis, and I mean soon, we're going to lose the right to debate a lot of other things. But more importantly, it's already damaging our ability to provide for our own national defense. I was just in Morón, Spain. Marines there, a detachment there, and these guys are the best of the best, y'all. I mean, they really are. And their mission is to protect the embassies in Africa. But they're having to minimize or move planes back from their base in Morón, Spain to the United States for training. And that's going to minimize their ability to protect our embassies in Africa. This is a very dangerous time. This national debt is called the greatest threat to national security by Admiral Mullen, who was the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff a few years ago. $19 trillion. We all know about that. But if interest rates today, and this is how critical it is, somebody asked me the other day, he said, well, when is the crisis going to hit? I said, I don't know, but it's in the rearview mirror. We're looking at it and behind, okay? $19 trillion of debt. If the interest goes to just the 30-year average of 5%, we would be paying over $1 trillion in interest today on a $4 trillion budget. It can't happen. It's just not possible. The Congressional Budget Office tells us if we don't do something, in 10 years, that $19 trillion will go to $30 trillion because of what this president has done. He came in, it was $10 trillion. He told us he was going to cut the debt. He's on track to more than double it, and Hillary Clinton is going to double down on what he just did. What more evidence do we need? We can't continue down this road. And the worst of all is that over the next 30 years alone, we have $100 trillion coming at us in future unfunded liabilities. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, pension benefits for federal employees, the interest on the debt. Ladies and gentlemen, that's $1 million for every household in America. $1 million. We can't afford it. The debt keeps us from protecting our country, from doing the things that we know we have to do as a country. This president has led us down the wrong road. He's spending $200 billion less on our military today than the 30-year average. We've got to solve this debt crisis right now. I'm fighting to solve the debt crisis. There's no doubt about that. But I'm also fighting like crazy to make sure we have the baddest, the meanest, the strongest, the most funded military in the history of the world. You know, I have to admit to you, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't frustrated. I've been up there about a year. They offered me the Kool-Aid. I didn't take it. I don't know what to tell you. I told you what I would do. I've gone up there to the best of my ability. I've tried to do it. And it is very frustrating. But let me give you a perspective on that frustration, because we've got to channel that frustration to win this fall. We can't just sit back and be frustrated. We've got to do something that can absolutely, next year, we don't have to wait 5 years, next year, we can make some of the changes that all of us want to make. There's been some progress. When we put the Republicans in charge in the Senate, we at least started to act again. We voted on 167 bills last year compared to only 15 under Harry Reid in 2015. Harry Reid and Barack Obama, they have perpetrated the biggest fraud on America. They purposed to shut down the U.S. Congress, and they did for 6 years. They had a supermajority for 2 years, and the other 4 years, they blocked every bill. There were over 300 bills on Harry Reid's desk when we took over last year. Now, that's ridiculous. Well, why did they do that? Well, they did it in order for this president to run the country without Congress through executive orders and regulatory mandates. Ladies and gentlemen, that's got to stop, and it needs to stop right here in this presidential election today. Two things that give me hope. One, we passed the Keystone Pipeline bill. It's a jobs bill. We also repealed Obamacare, both in the House and the Senate this year. We couldn't override a veto, but it tells me if we put Donald Trump in the White House, we will repeal Obamacare next year and be done with it. We passed an oversight bill for Iran, without which we wouldn't even know what was in that nuclear deal. And I have to believe next year we can make significant changes to unwind that thing. We ended the federal mandate on Common Core, and we passed a budget that took $7 trillion out of the president's desired budget over the next 10 years. Well, Perdue, why are you still frustrated? Because we're not dealing with the priorities. Washington is not dealing with the priorities that you and I know we have to make sure this country gets headed in the right direction. Social Security, Medicare, where's the solution on ISIS? We know we've disinvested in the military. What are we not, why aren't we turning around and rebuilding the military? And the biggest thing right now, folks, is this tie between the debt crisis and national security. We spend time talking about distracted things up there, and we're not focused on what you and I fight every day when the tube comes on. I don't care what channel you listen to. I can't watch any of it anymore. When you listen to it and they're talking about all this stuff, I said, wait a minute. We've had 12 debates in the Republican primary system this year for president. 26 hours of debate. How many questions have we had on the debt? Zero. Zero. Those are our debates. Come on, guys. Why aren't we driving this? That's why I'm still so outraged. This frustration with Washington, though, did not start with Barack Obama. In the last 100 years, the Democratic Party has had 3 supermajorities. Those supermajorities, I normally don't have this, you know, in the middle of my speech, but we'll find out if that's a... Hey guys, keep your seat for just a minute. They're going to check on it before we start moving. Yeah, I think Obama heard we were talking about him today, so we're good to go? You know, in speaking training, they never give you one of these, right? All right, so we got the top guy in the hotel, just went out to check where it is. So I'm going to continue until they come pull me off, and then I'll race you to the door. Yo, I can't tell you, this is so humbling for me to be here talking to who I know are the backbone of the Republican Party, and it means a lot to me. But I want to go back to this. This is the major point today. You know, many people today are more frustrated with the lack of progress in Washington. They're more frustrated by they're motivated by their frustration with Washington, and that's more important in some cases than ideology. Now let me try to explain that. It used to be in politics that it was liberal and conservative, and that's still very, very important. But what's happening is a lot of people are now saying, hey, wait a minute, I'm frustrated with the political class, the establishment, the political bubble, and we want to send a strong message to Washington. And that's what's going on right now. 86% of Republican primary voters feel like that they have no say in what happens in Washington. Y'all, we have to change that. We have to change it right now, and we can. With Trump in the White House, we can fix the budget process. We can absolutely eliminate these redundant agencies. We can grow the economy. With Trump in the White House, we can reduce spiraling health care costs. With Trump in the White House, we can absolutely save Social Security and Medicare. We have a chance to change the direction of our country. To do that, though, right here in this room and in 50 other rooms like this, we have to put our differences aside. It is great. We've got a conversation coming this afternoon where you're going to talk about rules and delegates and platforms and all that. That's all very, very important. But tonight, when we go home, we have got to stand united against the Democrats, y'all. We cannot afford a third term of Barack Obama. Let's remember who the real enemy is. Obama is a failed president. He promised to bring us together. He's been the most divisive president in my history, in my lifetime. He promised to work in a bipartisan way, but the first 2 years he had a supermajority and he crammed down the throat of the minority, that'd be us, Obamacare and Dodd-Frank, two of the most insidious laws of our time. He promised to reduce the debt. What a joke that is. He's on track to more than double it. He's failed on all fronts. And the worst is that Hillary Rodham Clinton is going around the country beating her chest, telling people how great he's doing, and she's going to double down on those policies. We cannot allow that. Those policies have failed. But that failure didn't just start with this president. In the last 100 years, and this is where the beeping started, so get ready, it may start again. In the last 100 years, this is what they don't want you to know. The media doesn't want you to know this. I don't understand why we as a party aren't screaming about this. They failed the very people they claim to champion. In the last 100 years, please go home and tell people this. Write people in Pennsylvania and Ohio and Wisconsin what I'm about to tell you. In the last 100 years, we've had 3 political supermajorities, all Democrat. The first gave us a New Deal, the second the Great Society, and the third Obamacare and Dodd-Frank. And I'm just a business guy, but I can put at the feet of those 3 supermajorities most of the responsibility for this financial catastrophe we have today. And the irony is that those sweeping programs, trillions of dollars over the last 100 years, have failed the very people they claim to champion, the working middle class and the working poor. Today, the poverty rate in the United States is exactly the same as it was in 1965 when they signed the Great Society and started the Great War on Poverty. Remember that? It's failed, trillions of dollars. Today, we have fewer people working as a percentage than any time since Jimmy Carter was president. Middle class incomes have gone down dramatically. This is the weakest economic recovery in the last 70 years. We've not had one, under Barack Obama, with all his bragging now about how great the economy is doing right now, here's the facts from a business guy. We've not had 1 quarter under this president of 3% or greater GDP growth. That used to be a norm. Today, he brags, well, we have a new norm. Maybe we won't be above 1.5% or 2% anymore. I don't believe that. We have $7 trillion not in this economy because of the nonsense that comes out of Washington right now. We can fix that. The worst, though, is that, when you look at this, last year, more companies, this is the first time in American history this happened, more companies actually went out of business than were started because of the fiscal policies coming out of Washington. And maybe worst of all, ladies and gentlemen, over the last 7 years, under this president, who brags about helping the underclass, the people who need help, he's allowed 4 million women to fall into poverty. You talk about a war on women, they've been perpetrating it for 100 years. I don't know what other evidence we have to have. The Democrat philosophy, the liberal progressive movement has failed. The evidence is there. It's overwhelming. This presidential election, unlike 2008 and unlike 2012, it could be a landslide because I think a lot of people, Democrat and Republican, as evidenced with 60% more turnout in our Republican primaries, are now getting it. That debate over all these other issues is secondary to the big one, and that is that these progressive policies have failed once and for all. Hillary doesn't get that. She's on the stump. Bernie certainly doesn't get it. I mean, he wants to go further, right? Well, the reality is that they failed, and Hillary doesn't get it. She's out there still bragging she's going to double down. Ladies and gentlemen, our country can't afford it. It's up to us. But we've got to focus, as we do that, we've got to focus on what our founding mothers and our founding fathers gave to us. And I always say founding mothers because you know these guys went home and they tested it at night with their wives. And like John Adams' wife, his wife was up there holding the farm down like most of their wives were. The true heroes of the American Revolution never get enough credit because we do have founding mothers, guys, and we had founding fathers. And they left us a legacy. And that legacy is this. These are the principles that they fought and died for, and that we fought and died for throughout our history. But you know, you and I lose sight of the focus of this. Economic opportunity, not guarantees, economic opportunity, fiscal responsibility, limited government, individual liberty. We've got to focus on those, and if we focus on those, the presidency will be ours, and we can change the direction of this country this year. The table is set. The time is now. The Democrats have failed. The liberal progressive policies have failed. Hillary has failed. She failed as a senator. She failed as a Secretary of State in so many ways we're just now finding out, and she will absolutely fail as a President of the United States. If she were going to make a difference, wouldn't she have done it already? We proved in my race, if you want different results in Washington, you have to send a different type of person to Washington. Well, we got one. We got one. It's going to be very entertaining. Ladies and gentlemen, one of my main messages today, we cannot allow Hillary Rodham Clinton one more night in our White House. We have the opportunity of our generation. We have an opportunity to put a different type of person in Washington, someone that's listening to us. But more importantly, this person in the White House can protect our Supreme Court for a generation from the liberal, progressive, activist judges that will absolutely be put up by Hillary Clinton. This president can absolutely solve the debt crisis, and this president can finally deal with this global security crisis and provide a better chance for peace around the world and prosperity here at home, and provide for our own national defense. This president has made us more vulnerable than any other president in modern time. Now we have a true outsider. I know when I see an outsider, y'all. Someone who's listening to us. He understands our free enterprise system. He's complaining about the very people we complain about, politicians, bureaucrats, the media. He's saying what you and I say at home when Fox News is on there and we're throwing our socks at the TV. He's saying what we feel. He can win Michigan and Mississippi on the same day. When did that ever happen? He can pull us together again. This is something that we need desperately as a country. And he can help America lead again. Yes, this guy can help us lead again, but he can also make America great again. It's an ugly hat with a great message. In this moment of crisis, we cannot afford a mistake. President Eisenhower said that history doesn't long tolerate the care of freedom to the weak or the timid. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our moment. You want to change America, this is it. Put our differences aside. This is our opportunity. Fear not the problems of today. Embrace the possibilities of tomorrow. America is the greatest country in the history of the world. I look at this flag and I get teary. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to you. Remember our mission to change the direction of the country. We must put aside our differences. We must stand together. We must get back to our founding principles. And ladies and gentlemen, we absolutely must elect Donald J. Trump, the next President of the United States. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. Thank you.